Hello there, welcome to lesson number 5 in our series on using FluidDesigner for 3D printing to create rings. In today's lesson we're going to show you how you can use a Nurbs surface, a Nurbs cylinder to create a ring. So if you start off FluidDesigner, we need to first of all go to Learning Projects, Jewellery Projects, Rings. We're doing lesson number 5. So if you drag and drop 05 Nurbs cylinder ring onto the workspace, I'll just start the Screencast keys and just adjust the panel there slightly. So this is what we're going to create. We're going to create this ring today with the holes in it. And if you look in the help panel, what it tells you in the help panel is that this object is only available from the Blender menu, not the FluidDesigner one. And the menu system up here at the moment is different from what you're normally using in FluidDesigner because it's been switched over to the Blender interface. If we click on the Blender button here and then click on this one and close that down, this is what you normally see in FluidDesigner. And this is a simplified interface which we think is more appropriate for beginners than the full-blown Blender interface. So we're trying to ease you in gently to using Blender effectively by using the FluidDesigner interface. But this is one example whereby the object that we want to add here, and if we look at the help panel again, it says add surface and then Nurbs cylinder. Well, if we go to add, there is no option here for surface. So there's a menu command missing here. And so the way to get this surface menu is, first of all, we click on the plus icon here in the top left hand corner of the window, and then we just click once to show the Blender interface. And when we do this, this menu system changes from FluidDesigner to the Blender interface. So what we can now do is add surface, and as you can see the menu system has changed. And we've got this extra command here, this extra menu system, surface, as well as mesh and curve. So we can add surface, and we want a Nurbs cylinder. So it constructs a Nurbs surface cylinder. Okay. Now if we want, we can shut down that Blender interface by just clicking on Blender and then clicking on this one, and that takes us back to FluidDesigner now. I'm just going to check that the screencast keys are being displayed. So what have we got here with this object? Well, if we go to View and Zoom to Selected, oops, it's not going to it. View and Zoom to Selected, there we are. Here's our Nurbs surface cylinder. So this is the object that we've just added to the screen. Now we want to change the dimensions of this object. We want to make it suitable for a ring. So what we're going to do is to change the X dimension to 20 millimeters, the Y to 20. So in other words, we'll have an internal diameter of 20 millimeters, and Z to 15. So the height of the ring will be 15, or you can think of it as the width when you put the ring on your finger. So we want 20 millimeters here for X. 20 millimeters for Y, and we want 15 mm for millimeters for Z. So that gives us some thickness to it. So there's our object now. There's our Nurbs surface cylinder. So we've created an internal size now. Now if you look at the finished object, you can see that it's not simply a ring shape. It's been dragged down at this end and dragged down here and dragged up here and dragged up at the other side. So how do we do that? Well, we're not in actually, before we go any further, because we've resized these as is usual in FluidDesigner, we always need to do Control A and apply the scale. When you resize objects, always apply the scale, otherwise you could have problems printing. Probably not made much difference here because this is a surface, but not to worry. So what we want to do now is to change the shape of this so we get this the profile of the finish ring. So with the Nurbs surface cylinder highlighted, if we press the tab key to go into edit mode, you'll see that we've got control points around this object in various places. The top and the bottom and in the corners essentially. So if we look at the finished object, okay, so let's we want to sort of drag it down here. So if we click on that control point at the top there, I'll zoom in. If we click on that control point, I don't know whether, no, it's not highlighting it, is it? Okay, yeah, there we are. I've highlighted that control point at the top. If I drag the Z arrow down, you can see I can reshape the surface, this cylinder surface. And I want to do the same on the back face now, so I'm highlighting that control point and I'm dragging that down. Now we could enter in values up here to get it exactly the same if we want to do that. Let's see, what is Z? That's 2.74. Let's actually type in a Z value of 3 there. I need 3 mm for 3 millimeters. And if we do the same for the front control point now, not always easy to get these. Yeah, there's the front control point. That's 1.7 there. So if we do 3 mm for that one, okay, what I've done is I've made the adjustment on both of these to be exactly the same numerically. So that will give it an even look. You don't have to do that, but that's a way of doing it accurately. Where else do we want to change this? Well, we want to change it on these other two faces now. This face here we want to drag up. So I want to highlight that control point in the middle of this side. And this time I'm just going to pull it up. And we want to do the same on the back. Okay, so I want to highlight that control point there. And again, just to drag it up. Now clearly you can do that with all of these control points. And you can modify this Nurbs cylinder surface cylinder, whichever way you want to think of it. You can reshape it in all sorts of directions. But we want to try and mirror this ring that we've got at the bottom there. Okay, so those are the only changes I'm going to make. I've just moved this surface down and this surface down, this up and that up. So what we need to do now is to come out of edit mode. We've made the changes that we want to make. And the next thing we need to do is convert this into a mesh. This is currently a curve. I know it's a surface, but it's a curve. So we need to convert this into a mesh, and we do that in FluidDesigner by going to Tools, Object Tools, and converting it to a mesh. And at this point, the color will change. And what we want to do now is to put some holes in it. As you can see, the finished ring has got some holes around it. So let's go to View and view it from the front. We're actually in perspective mode here. That's why it's looking a little bit odd. So if we toggle from perspective mode to ortho mode, we can now put some holes in this object. So I'm going to zoom in and put 3 holes in this side and 3 holes on the back. So I'll zoom right in. So again, we need to switch to edit mode. So you can see the mesh now. And what we want to do is to delete some of these faces. So I'm going to highlight that face there, and to delete it you press X on the keyboard and delete the face. Now as you can see there's a different color there. That's actually the face on the back surface, so I'm going to delete that as well. So I'll delete that face. And then I'm going to try and be symmetrical, so I'm going to delete this face, X on the keyboard and delete, X on the keyboard and delete. Now if these dots are not in the middle of the screen, if it doesn't actually default to selecting the mesh, you may need to click the right mouse button and select face select. So what I'm saying is, if yours actually comes up with vertex select, so in other words you can only select the vertices, you might need to change it to face select. Face select is where you see the dots in the middle of the faces. So I'm going to now highlight that face and press X and delete the face. Highlight that face and press X and delete it. Highlight that one and delete it. Highlight that one and delete it. Okay, so I've deleted a number of faces now, 3 at the front and 3 at the back, which mirrors my finished object. So I can now come out of edit mode. So what I want to do now is add some thickness to this. At the moment this is just a shell. It's not going to print as a shell, and we can add thickness by going to the properties window and selecting the modifiers icon, that's the spanner. And what we're going to do is to add a solidify modifier. I'm just going to double check how thick to make this. I think, yeah, 1mm is the thickness I'm going to apply. So we're assuming you're going to print this as in silver, say, so it'll be 1mm thick. So if we just zoom in, if we change the thickness value here to 1mm, you'll see at the moment it's offset the thickness on the inside. I'll just keep going and you can see it's adding thickness on the inside. Now if we do that, our finger's not going to fit through this ring, so it's usually a good idea with things like rings is to change the offset to +1, sorry. It was at -1, which offsets it on the inside. If we change the offset to +1, when we apply the thickness, you'll see it's applying it on the outside of the shell. So I want a thickness value of 1mm on the outside of the shell. Now to confirm that thickness, we always need to go to Tools, Object Tools, and Convert to a Mesh, and that will disappear. The modifier will disappear from the window here. So that's now applied. So we've got our ring now. We've got holes in it. What we need to do is to delete the original one. Now we could go to View and Top and zoom in, and we could check the internal diameter of this. So I'll just do that quickly. So it is 20mm, this one, so that's pretty much what we were expecting. That's what we set up the value initially. Always double check it. If you need to change it, you can also always add a cylinder in here and use the scaling function to make it bigger, but we're going to keep this at 20mm. We're going to assume that that's the right size. So what we need to do is to save this now. So always as in FluidDesigner, we suggest you go to Save As, go up through the menu system. It's Jewellery Projects Rings, so it's My Projects folder, Jewellery Projects Rings. I'm going to save Lesson 05, the Nurbs Cylinder ring, as a Blender file. We can't print Blender files, so we need to export this as a printable file format, and we like using Wavefront OBJ format. I'm going to save it to the desktop, so it's 05 Nurbs Cylinder ring OBJ file. As is always the case, we go to Netfab Basic and check this. So if we go to Project and Open, go to the desktop, open 05 Nurbs Cylinder ring. There's no warning red triangles, but it's always a good idea to do this. We need to go to Extras and repair the part. And if I just move the window across now, you'll see that there aren't actually any problems with this. This sort of object in FluidDesigner works really well, doesn't cause any problems, these Nurbs cylinders. But the mesh will have been triangulated in Netfab Basic, so always run automatic repair and execute it, and apply the repair and remove the old part. And all we need to do now is to save this. So go to Part, export the part as a wavefront object, export it to the desktop, and the file that says repaired, Nurbs 05 Nurbs Cylinder ring repaired, that's the OBJ file that you can send to the printer. So that gives you some idea how you can use a Nurbs cylinder to create a simple ring. Okay, so that's the end of this lesson. Thank you.